Hello, and welcome to the Colorado Health Foundation's Grantee Orientation webinar. My name is Amy Latham, and I'm the Vice President of Philanthropy here at the Foundation. Let's go ahead and get started with our agenda. I'll begin with a brief introduction to the Foundation and describe how we work with our grantee partners. Next, Sarah Guillaume, Senior Director of Grant-Making Operations, will follow with important information on grant agreements and amendments and the grant reporting process. Finally, Taryn Fort, our Senior Director of Communications, will provide some communications resources. At the Foundation, we're guided by the belief that health is a basic human right. We're bringing health in reach for all Coloradans by engaging closely with communities across the state and working through investing, policy advocacy, learning, and capacity building. At the Foundation, we have 3 cornerstones upon which our work is based and that we look for in the work of our partners. First, we serve Coloradans who have low income and have historically had less power or privilege. Second, we are informed by the community and those we exist to serve. And finally, everything we do is with the intent of creating health equity. Our organizational strategy is designed with equity at the heart of our work. Why? We know that lack of opportunity, poverty, and racism are key drivers of health challenges experienced by Coloradans, their families, and communities across the state. Because of this, we believe it's essential that every step we take is designed to create fair opportunities for all. I want to talk a little bit about how we work together with our grantee partners. First, we believe that communication is absolutely key to a good relationship. Your primary contact here at the Foundation is your program officer, sometimes called PO for short. Your program officer will be in contact with you at least once per year, either over the phone or more likely in person. We love and welcome the sharing of good news from our grantee partners. We also really welcome the opportunity to learn about what's not going as planned with your grant. We ask you to really create open and honest lines of communication with us at every important juncture in our relationship. We also ask that you alert us to key staff changes just so that we can make sure that our communications are going to the right people at your organization. Finally, I want to note that we may call on you on occasion to share your expertise with us or with another organization that are either related to or perhaps even outside the parameters of your specific grant. We may also offer to connect you with organizations doing similar work, maybe who could learn from your work or who we think you might be able to learn from. We also just want to emphasize that we think these are important ways to increase our impact together, but these are opportunities that we present to you and certainly not considered mandatory collaboration. If your program officer with the Foundation should change over the course of your grant, you'll receive a call or email from us to introduce you to the new program officer. Generally, we'll schedule a meeting or a call. And you will receive a letter from the Foundation with complete contact information for your new program officer. Of course, should you forget who your program officer is, or if your program officer has changed and you just need to double check, you can be reconnected with our program staff by emailing funding@coloradohealth.org. We will then connect you with the program officer who works in your geographic area. It's really important for us to understand how we're doing when it comes to building strong grantee relationships. To that end, we, on a regular basis, survey our grantees and ask for input and feedback about how we're doing. We completed a grantee perception survey in 2015. We heard from 259 of our grantees from across the state working in a variety of areas. The survey results really helped us understand what we're doing well and where we could change our practices and improve our practices to have stronger relationships. We take these results to heart, and they really guide our approach to how we strengthen our relationships with grantees. A couple of guiding principles that I want to share with you. When you submit reports to the foundation, we want you to know that we read those reports and we use the information that you provide to us to help us understand your work, your impact, and to help inform and guide our future work. We commit to providing a response to grantee reports within 60 days of receiving the report. We may have questions for you about what you submitted. We may have comments or ideas that we also want to share with you. We commit to responding to your email or phone inquiries within 1 business day. If we're out of the office, we'll send you a notification that we are out of the office with a date that you can expect a response. And finally, we do have multiple program officers, lots of folks working out in communities. We really strive to coordinate internally to make things easy for you. And we commit to working together internally to just streamline our communications with you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Guillaume to talk about the grant agreement and amendments and reporting process.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, I'm Sarah Guillaume, Senior Director of Grant Making Operations here at the Foundation. Let's take a few minutes to talk about the Foundation's grant agreements and amendment process. So the Foundation uses both an online grant application and an online reporting system, which is called Flux. You can register for Flux if you haven't already on the Foundation's website. We find there to be a lot of benefits to using an online grant reporting system, which includes a minimization of the use of paper. It provides consistency for us, and it also is aligned with the application process that you hopefully went through when you first asked the Foundation for funding for your grant project. We require that all grantees submit reports, and some grantees may have additional requirements. You should refer to your grant agreement for details about your reporting schedule, and note that you'll receive an email reminder about 30 days prior to the requirement being due. We have several resources on our website designed to help you complete your online report. You'll find a sample report guide, frequently asked questions, as well as this webinar and other information. With all that said, however, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly or email us at grants@coloradohealth.org if you have any questions as you complete your report. Now let's discuss information on grant agreements and amendments. This includes key information about your organization and grant award. Here are a few key pieces of information to review. For contact information, on the grant agreement, you'll see that we've listed a project contact as well as a primary signatory. The project contact is the person that will be our point of contact as it relates to the specific project or activity funded by the Foundation. Note that in most cases, payments will be sent to the attention of the project contact. The primary signatory is often the person that is the head of your organization and has the authority to sign and enter into the grant agreement. You'll also see the award amount, term and months, and the project start and end dates. In addition, you can see the organization name that checks will be made payable to, as well as the address and tax identification number for that organization. Please be sure that this is accurate and contact the Foundation if any information needs to be corrected. Other key information that's contained within the first 1 to 2 pages of your agreement includes the purpose of the project, which is located near the top of your agreement and gives a high-level description of your project. Any contingencies related to your grant, and note that these must typically be fulfilled in order for you to receive a portion or all of your grant funding. Anticipated measurable results and intermediate milestones related to your project. These sections outline the performance and benchmarks that are expected from your grant. We'll discuss these items along with how to report on that information in more detail in just a few minutes. You'll also see your reporting and payment schedule listed on your agreement. We'll send you a reminder again about 30 days before a report is due. We don't consider a report to be received until it's fully complete, so that means including all the required attachments and financial statements and information that's required. Again, we'll cover this information in more detail in just a few minutes. And finally, the approved budget is attached as the last page of your grant agreement, and we expect that you're going to use the grant funds in accordance with that budget for the purposes that are outlined within those first few pages of your agreement. Please read the grant agreement in its entirety, even if you've previously received funding from the Foundation. We do a periodic review of our grant agreement, and at times we'll update clauses and information, so it's important to review this document each time you receive a grant. There's 2 sections in the agreement that we often receive questions about, and they're publicity and intellectual property. In the publicity section, you'll see that we encourage you to publicize information regarding your grant from the foundation. We ask that you wait to formally publicize your grant until we have a fully executed grant agreement in place. In a few minutes, Taryn will share more information about how we can partner to communicate your grant. And in addition, you'll see in this section that we state that the foundation may include information about your grant in its materials and on its website. For the section pertaining to intellectual property, here you'll be verifying that you have the right to use any and all intellectual property associated with your project. In addition, we expect that any intellectual property resulting from your grant will be used by your organization to fulfill its charitable purpose. And finally, the foundation will retain a non-exclusive license to the work of your grant. Please contact me or your program officer if you have any questions or concerns regarding the information contained within the grant agreement. If you haven't yet, when you're ready, please sign the agreement and return the entire document to the foundation. The agreement will then be signed by Amy Latham, our Vice President of Philanthropy, and we will return a copy of the executed document to you. Once the agreement is fully executed, we will release your first payment, unless that payment is contingent on something else, such as challenge grant documentation or a memorandum of understanding with key partners. For multi-year grants, you can generally expect to receive your payment about 45 days after submitting your progress report. Please note that we do offer the option to electronically release grant funds directly into your organization's designated bank account, rather than sending you a physical check. So now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about grant amendments, specifically budget revisions and timeline extensions. We'll also talk about how to request an amendment to your grant. It's okay to request an amendment to your grant, and we know that changes may be necessary in order to support your project. So to begin, let's talk about budget revisions. You can find additional information on when you need to request a budget revision in Section 2 of your grant agreement. Generally, you'll need to request a budget revision if you answer yes to all of the following: if the grant is greater than $50,000, if changes to individual line items are greater than 25% of that line item, and if changes to individual line items are greater than $1,000. Be sure to use your approved budget, the one that's included with your agreement, as the basis for your revision request. You do not need to request a revision if you're shifting funds within the same line item. For example, using personnel funds to support 2 part-time positions rather than 1 full-time position. The next type of grant amendment you might request is called a no-cost extension, which may be needed to extend the duration of your grant. We understand that delays may occur, such as a delay in hiring staff that's necessary to implement your funded project. As a result, you may need more time to achieve the expected results of your project. You can again refer generally to Section 2 of your grant agreement for additional details on when to request a no-cost extension. We'll typically choose to grant you an extension to allow you to complete the project as intended, rather than asking you to return funds to the foundation. In order to request an amendment to your grant, log into our Flux Grantee portal. Please do not include your amendment request within the narrative of your progress or final report. The Request an Amendment option in the Grantee portal includes a section to request a budget revision, a no-cost extension, or to describe any other amendment that you might need. Please be sure to provide all requested information, including timeframes, dates, and details for all extensions and revisions. The information will then be reviewed by our grant-making operations staff, as well as with your program officer. We'll contact you if we have any questions or need additional information. If approved, you'll receive an amendment letter from the foundation to append to your grant agreement. The letter will outline any approved changes and modifications to your reporting or payment schedule. So let's shift gears for a moment and spend a few minutes discussing the foundation's reporting requirements in more detail. You will submit progress reports every 12 months during your grant term, and a final report will be due 30 days after the end of your grant. The progress and final report questions are the same. The final report is simply due at the end of the grant term. Again, due dates for your reports are listed within your grant agreement. And progress reports in particular should be submitted on or before the due date listed in your grant agreement for subsequent payments to be released as scheduled. Your program officer will review the report and follow up with you if there are any questions. And we do want to emphasize that these reports are very useful to the foundation. We use the information to learn about your work, and we want to hear from you about both what worked as well as what didn't. In order to complete your progress or final report, we recommend that you use your grant agreement as a guide to outline and write your report. The content of your report should focus on grant progress to date. The questions on the report ask for an update on one or more measurable results, if there are any specified within your grant agreement. We ask that you report on the number of measurable results achieved to date, and in most cases, that's for the 12-month period that report covers. Also, please give us an update on progress on your intermediate milestones. For example, if a milestone was to hire a project director, please report the date of the hire of the new director. A question on the report asks for a description of significant successes and challenges that your organization experienced related to the grant. And then we also ask that you include updated financial statements as well as a budget narrative. Additionally, you'll have the option to include another attachment if you have any other kind of evaluation results that you'd like to share. A short summary of other results is welcome, but certainly not required unless that's a specific milestone of your grant. And again, that would be listed within your agreement. And finally, please report on the actual grant expenses using the budget template that's provided with the report. So here we're looking at a sample report milestone and the type of brief information that we'd like you to see you report on. Please do document the challenges as well as the successes in achieving your milestones. So here you can see that this grant had a milestone to hire a program director by December, but didn't get that position filled into January. This is fine, and it may help explain any deviations in grant performance if the program got a late start. Again, here's another sample milestone and report response. This example shows what contributed to the successful achievement of the milestones. This is an example of what may be a learning for the organization. For example, this intervention is successful when parents receive childcare and a meal at the time of service, relieving that burden and enabling them to successfully complete the curriculum. There's a sample report complete with fictitious responses on our website that you are welcome to use for guidance as you complete your report. My best advice is to use your grant agreement as your outline, since that document spells out what you intended to do during the grant term. In regards to financial information, you'll be asked to provide a brief summary of how you spent the grant funds, and if you have fully spent the money that you've received through the grant. You do not need to give us line item detail on what the funds were used for. Your summary should be clear that the funds were spent as originally intended through the purpose of the grant, and if they were not, please briefly explain why. Now I'd like to turn it over to Taryn Fort, who will talk about your communications partnership with the Foundation.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Sharing news of this important partnership between a grantee and the Foundation is a really easy way to maximize the impact of your work through strategic communications. We're here to work with you as you identify ways of making this information more publicly available. In your grant agreement, we share information about how to communicate about the grant you've received. If you look at Section 10, labeled Publicity, you can find the detail. Essentially, here's how it works. Once your grant agreement has been finalized, we encourage you to start sharing the news by informing your staff and your board and others who you serve through appropriate communications channels, such as a news release to the media. You might want to email those you serve, including your staff and board. You can also share articles in your local community newsletters and get in touch with your local newspaper. And you can also share this information through social media. The grant agreement also outlines a few other guidelines we want to make sure you understand. First of all, it's required that you obtain written approval when you develop any content for promotional purposes that includes information about the grant you've received from us, the Colorado Health Foundation as an organization, or any of our foundation staff. That written approval is required to be received prior to releasing or publicizing any of this information. Number two, if you've received funds for general operating support, we expect to be acknowledged as a sponsor for major events by including the Colorado Health Foundation's logo in the event promotion materials and print collateral. And I'll share just a little bit more information in a moment about how you can get your hands on one of those logos and also make sure that we have a chance to review it for you. Number three, we of course welcome any photography that is relevant to the grant that you are making available to our foundation for use. As you can imagine, we want to make sure that any photography that's shared with us includes any client releases for publication purposes. And finally, when it comes to information that's relevant to your grant or your organization as a grantee, we want to make sure that you understand that that information may be shared by us at any time. That could include photography that you've shared with us, the logo or trademark that is relevant to your organization, and other published or printed information or materials that are provided to us by you, the grantee. Our foundation, like many of you, has specific style guidelines that we use when creating and generating content. When referencing the foundation in text or verbally, we ask that you refer to us as the Colorado Health Foundation. Within written text, we want to make sure that you're using an uppercase "the" preceding our name. If you need to use an acronym on second use, we prefer either CHF or the foundation. If you'd like to add our logo to an external communication, you can request logo files from our communications team by sending your request to info@coloradohealth.org. With the grantee, you'll be automatically signed up to receive emails from us. If you wish not to receive them, you'll receive an opportunity to opt out. But emails really are the easiest way to hear about any new funding opportunities, to hear about news from our foundation in general, to read about our blog, and also to register for events. We also use social media very proactively to communicate news and important information. You'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and on the slide you'll see our handles and our Facebook address. If you haven't already, go ahead and like us, and we'll do the same. Finally, we often live stream and archive most of our events. If you view our YouTube page, you can find access to those archived event settings. I wanted to share a few communications resources that may be helpful to you. Communications Network is a national membership-based organization that serves communication professionals who are working to do social good. Their audience includes those of us who work in philanthropy, communications professionals who work in the nonprofit and for-profit sectors, and also those folks who are working as freelancers and contractors. There's also a local ComNet community called ComNet Denver that is free and open to anyone interested in networking in the Denver area. And finally, Reagan Communications and the Nonprofit Technology Network also offer a number of educational resources and networking opportunities as well. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah to review frequently asked questions.
Thank you, Taryn. Finally, we'll review some frequently asked questions. Does a no-cost extension need to be completed for changes to milestones in our grant agreement? A change to a milestone in your grant agreement does not require a formal amendment request, but we do recommend that you stay in touch with your program officer and let them know of changes, particularly if those changes will impact the overall timeframe or the expected outcomes of the project. Can you give me an example of what type of program challenges we would document in a progress report? You might mention challenges such as hiring delays, trouble recruiting program participants, or a shift in your sources of funding. They could be expected or unexpected challenges that you've experienced during the period recovered by your grant. If there are funds left over, can we add some additional components to our project, and how do we seek approval for that? Talk to your program officer if you have funds left over. We will often work with you to extend the project so you're able to use the funds, but again, it depends on the circumstances. How long does it take to get approval for a grant amendment? If you provide all of the information needed in your amendment request, you can typically expect a response from the Foundation within 2 weeks. We'll let you know if that time frame is going to be significantly longer than that. Can we apply for additional funds to expand our existing program, and for how many years at a time? Talk to your program officer if you're interested in seeking additional funding for a current project or grant. All right, this concludes the Grantee Orientation webinar. And again, we encourage you to reach out to any of us with questions about the content that we covered today. Thank you for joining us as we work together to improve the health of all Coloradans.